Hi, I'm Tara, and thank you for joining me for Tara's Reviews. Today I'm going to be going over the book Karin Slaughter's Pieces of Her. And I'm going to do just a little bit of an overview and then just share some of my thoughts and opinions. And it might delve into a little bit of spoilers. However, if you're okay with knowing just little tidbits here and there, then stay tuned. And if you've already read the book and you just want some thoughts and some opinions, then you're in the right place. So I just want to start by saying that trying to do an overview of this book is going to be a little challenging, but I'm going to do my best. So basically, the book's main characters are Laura, aka Jane, and Andrea, aka Andy. So they're mother and daughter. Andrea has been in New York, and you get like a little bit that she spent some time in New York trying to find herself. The way that the book starts out, you basically, I mean, for lack of better explanation, she's just kind of a dumpy, frumpy, self-proclaimed like loser, basically. She just has like really low self-esteem, doesn't really seem like people care about her. If she went off the map, maybe nobody would even notice or miss her. And that's just my opinion. That's how my takeaway from how the author portrays her in my perspective. And Laura / Jane, on the other hand, is her mother, and she's gone through some cancer battle, and so Andrea has moved back from New York and comes to stay with her mom. She's living next door to her mother's house in a little apartment above the garage, which there also explains a little bit about Andrea. She's, you know, the way that the author describes how she lives is just like dirty. She's 30 something years old, or around 30, 31, and the way that the author describes her little apartment is, to me, worse than a teenager. It's almost like she's got some serious untreated mental illness or something, like severe depression or something like that. And I just really think that Andrea is a really unlikable, unrelatable character. However, she is one of the main characters. And so her mom and her basically go at the beginning of the book to lunch to celebrate her birthday, and I'm honestly blanking if it was her 30th or 31st birthday, but somewhere around there. And shooting occurs that they get caught in the crossfires, and basically Andrea's mother, who she knows as Laura, basically stops the shooter from doing any further damage or shooting her own daughter. She's willing to sacrifice herself to save her daughter, but at the same time kind of takes care of the shooter. And he's already left some victims behind, but her daughter is not one of them. Laura does get some injuries from the shooting, and I think that Laura fears that she's going to be charged with her taking care of the situation the way she did, and she basically tells her daughter that she needs to move out. And in the night that her daughter's going to move out, a whole nother situation occurs where a man in a hooded sweatshirt comes and basically puts a bag over Laura's head, trying to get information out of her. And luckily, Andrea has not actually moved out like she intended, because of her lazy teenager kind of personality, she is still there and happens upon this intruder and takes care of him in her own way. And then at that point, Laura basically says, okay, you need to get the heck out of here. I have a storage unit in such and such town, in such and such place, in such and such state, with all of these little like details and things that she shares with Andrea, and Andrea goes. She goes on this sort of adventure to go and kind of hide out and wait for her mother to contact her to let her know it's safe to come home. On a side note, Andrea has a stepfather, or well, yeah, I guess it would be your stepdad, but the only dad that she was raised with and knew, and I believe that he is an African-American attorney. And so there's like, you know, some layers of elements of race that go into this story. There's layers of what's right and what's wrong. There's morals that are layered into the story. There's also the fact that as I go on to describe a little more about the overview, there's also like a cult, not a cult, but cult and like anarchist type situations that occur. So ultimately, Laura / Jane, the story flips back and forth between when Laura went by her birth name Jane and then her assumed name Laura, and back when it flips back to when she was her birth name Jane was back in, I think, 1986, and events that occurred in a short amount of time in 1986 kind of tell you the backstory of how she ended up to be Laura and where she is in current day, which was actually 2018. Although I'm doing this review of this book in 2021, I do believe that this was published in 2018. Yes, it was. So I'm really trying to do my best here to try to explain the overview, but there really is a lot going on. So Laura has / Jane, so now I'll refer to her as Jane. Jane has a father that is a business mogul. They're multimillionaires or billionaires, and he's an extremist when it comes to his views. Politically, I would say like misogynistic maybe views. Not maybe, but for sure. And he also has abused Jane and like physically abused her and assaulted her many times in her upbringing. And the mother is just briefly mentioned, and it frustrates me and infuriates me because they never explain whether she's dead, alive, where she went, and if they did, I missed it. I will say that although I have the paperback version, I listened to the audio, and it's maybe sometimes I miss something by doing the audio version. So if I did miss where Annette, I believe is Jane's mom's name, please tell me in the comments what page it's on, where it says whether Annette is dead or alive when Jane is Jane, and where she is and what she's up to. I feel like that's a character that I would have liked to know more about and could have played more into the story and made it better. So let me continue with the overview. So basically, Jane has brothers Jasper and Andrew, and Jasper's in the military, and Andrew is a, like, I don't know, I don't even know what he was doing for a living, to be honest with you. I just know that he had like a history of substance abuse, and he had psychological issues, and he had self-identity issues, and just like all the things. He was going through all the things. And so he was like kind of a more interesting character. And then there's Nick, who is Jane's boyfriend. And he is sort of the unofficial leader of a basic cult. It gets referred to as a cult further on into the book by a police officer or detective, and then the author kind of runs with it after that, and she then starts to use the word cult more often in the book. Ultimately, there's all these layers of things going on, multiple different characters. Some of them are well developed, others not so much. I think Jane is a very interesting character, and she's more likable as Jane. But then there's parts of her, especially I feel like as Laura, that I start to feel like she always had that anarchist mentality, and it never went away. And there's something devious and dark to her personality. And even though she loves her daughter and would do anything for her, she still has this darkness to her. And it just made me not really like her. She's definitely the interesting character, but I didn't really like her. And at the end, I just thought she's really not a good person. So this book is actually going to be made into a Netflix series or movie, I'm not sure which, and I'm interested as to how they're going to portray Jane / Laura's character. And so, okay, I gotta keep going with the overview here. I'm kind of layering, I think, my overview and my personal thoughts throughout rather than giving an overview and then my thoughts. So just bear with me on this. So basically, Jane has a negative interaction with Nick while they're trying to do all of this cult, anarchy type actions. And they have like all these plans and safe houses and all these events and things that they're gonna do. And Jane's pregnant, not for the first time either. Basically at some point, I think it mentions that Nick, her boyfriend, has beat a child from her womb, which is very disturbing. But yet she, even at the end of the book, still has this lust and love for him. And I really think that the author is trying to show the mind manipulation that somebody can have on another person, and the misinterpretation of love and the skewed perspective of things. But I don't go for that. I don't think that women are victims and we should just blame everything on a guy and what a guy says. I think that that doesn't speak well for women. I think that if people are in a relationship, it takes two. And yes, one can be manipulating and abusive. I'm not taking away from that. What I'm saying is especially after she'd gotten out of that situation, hadn't been with him in a couple decades, for her to still feel that pull from him, I feel like speaks to her character and who she really is and how broken she is and all the taintedness that she has. Just because somebody's a victim doesn't mean that they're also an angel. She was just as much a violent criminal and a manipulator and a liar. So I think that's really why I just didn't like Laura / Jane's character at the end of the story. And I'm not really sure where the author was trying to go, if she's like trying to portray like feminist thoughts and opinions and portraying all of that, but ultimately I'm put off by it. I feel like we can't, no matter what happens, if we are mentally abused, physically abused, intimately abused, we can't just lay down and play victim and point fingers. And one reason why is because the person that is doing the abusing, what is their story? Do they literally like come out of the womb and when they get to age whatever, 10, 12, 18, go, I'm now going to be an abuser and I'm going to be a manipulator? No, I don't believe that. I believe that hurting people hurt people. And I believe that just overall, just to like go off of the book description so much and just like talking about the big topic of abuse that is layered throughout this book, we have to start looking at not just somebody as an abuser, but what is going on with that person. Why are they doing the things they're doing, and help that person. We spend too much time writing off people in society and not helping them. What if that person has a mental illness like bipolar or manic depression or schizophrenia or some kind of mood disorder or major depression? Or what if they were physically, mentally, psychologically abused and they are just continuing the cycle? You know, that doesn't mean that they're a great person, but it doesn't mean they don't have the potential to be. I feel like there needs to be spent more time on reform and helping people that have these abusive personalities or abusive tendencies, and not just labeling everyone as bad, good, or victim and persecutor or abuser. I don't know. I don't want to upset anyone because I know that abuse is prevalent. I have personal experience with a lot of negative things, so I'm not just saying what I'm saying without having a reason for saying what I'm saying. And just know that you're not alone. If you are, you know, someone that has dealt with abuse of any kind or mental health issues of any kind. I think that there's too much weight put on people that commit crimes also. Like, let's just say for a second here, how about a prison reform? Like, there's so many people that should be in counseling centers, serving time after, before, in. Maybe we need to completely do a complete prison reform and have branches of prisons where if you commit XYZ crime, you go to this prison section. If you commit XYZ crime, you go to this section, prison. I don't think that people that are psychotic should just be put in prison. I definitely don't think, you know, saying somebody's insane and then they get to run the streets is okay either. But there's definitely something to be said about making a change. For example, you know, I live in the state of Michigan. Marijuana is legal for 21 and up. You have to go about all the right ways to use it legally. But I don't think anyone, this is personal opinion right here, I personally don't think anyone of any age, in any state in the United States should do any jail time for consuming marijuana. Just plain old marijuana. Hard drugs and all of that other stuff is a whole nother ball game. That's a whole nother situation. At the same time, it's the users that shouldn't be imprisoned ever. I think that users that get caught should be, like hard drugs I'm talking about, should be taken to a place that doesn't exist right now in prisons, where they're getting rehabilitation and counseling and help for what's prompting them to do the use of the drugs. There's always a reason behind actions, unless someone genuinely is just evil. And I think that exists, but I think that's few and far in this world. I think there's more people suffering from mental health issues than's being acknowledged, and putting somebody in a cell that's battling with inner battles of psychiatric issues, emotional issues, personal abuse issues, to then lock them in a cell isn't paving a way forward for humanity and health. Okay, so I did not expect in my book review to get off on that tangent, but I'm gonna leave that in this review because I think it's so important. And if any of you feel what I'm saying and you relate to what I'm saying, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So back to the book. Okay, so overall, the book ending, so of course spoiler alerts here, there's definitely a few characters that are worth mentioning. Mike, who is overseeing Laura for her, I can't think of the word, but like basically when you testify against people and then you get like protection, like the witness protection program kind of situation. He's basically like her overseer, U.S. Marshal, I think is what his actual title is. And I liked that character. I wish they would have delved more into, the author would have delved more into Mike. I thought he was pretty freaking interesting. Also, Jane is like a really world-renowned piano player or pianist in her youth, and there's just so many layers to this book. There's so much going on. You just have to read it. It's so hard to give an overview of this book, so I apologize. But just read it. I gave it 3 stars out of 5, but I definitely think it's worth the read, especially if you like mystery and suspense. There's enough mystery and intrigue that you want to keep reading to get information to tie up some loose ends. Although I will say that I feel like there are some loose ends that don't fully get tied up. There's a little bit of a relationship that sort of starts to ship between Mike and Andrea, so there's that. So could that make for, you know, like another book? I'd like to see that. Maybe, Karin, I don't know if you ever do series because I haven't read enough of your books, but maybe write another book that involves Mike and Andy's Andrea, and let's grow Andrea's character. Let's make her more interesting because she was boring. Boring. She just, all I could think of was that she was just a meh, boring, dirty, grimy, like teenager personality of laziness and lack of drive and motivation to do anything, to her being one of the main characters. It was really hard to follow and engage with her and really like her, but I felt like waiting for her character to develop further, and it just really didn't. So, Karin Slaughter. I don't want you to think I'm slaughtering this book because there is some good that can be taken. But I really like some of these characters that you could develop a little further. So hook it up, girl. All right, so how about that for overview and a book review today? Well, tell me, did you like it? What did you think? Thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned for future rants and book reviews to come, as well as reviews in general. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.